The Terminator series is considered by many to be among the most iconic action series ever made, as well as one of the best examples of a franchise going completely off the rails due to studio interference and an insistence on keeping the franchise going. But nonetheless, regardless of how one feels about the rest of the movies, there's no denying that the first two are still considered iconic pieces of action cinema to this day, with Terminator 2 Judgment Day in particular often being hailed as one of the greatest action movies ever made. And because of that, it might surprise a lot of people to learn that the original Terminator movie wasn't actually meant to be an action movie. It does have plenty of action in it, yes, but James Cameron has admitted on many occasions that he actually wrote it as a horror movie. And if you look at the story template of The Terminator, it's actually pretty easy to tell that this is indeed the case. It just so happened that due to many different factors, including its own sequel diving headfirst into the action genre, that most people don't realize this. But that doesn't change the fact that in the end, The Terminator actually still makes for a great horror movie, and could easily be considered one of the best of the 1980s. And today, I'd like to go over what exactly it is that makes The Terminator stand out so much from other 80s horror movies, even if you don't take its sequels into account. And obviously there will be spoilers ahead, so in case you somehow haven't seen the movie and don't want to know what happens, you should click off this video. Okay, so as I mentioned before, if you look at the structure of the Terminator, it's actually rather obvious that James Cameron was modeling it after the horror genre, and specifically slasher movies. You have the unkillable monster that will stop at nothing to get at its target and will kill anyone who gets in its way. You've got the police who are both useless and unable to help stop it, instead just becoming part of its kill count. And of course, the famous final girl, who is just an ordinary woman plagued by the monster and is finally able to destroy it herself. Honestly, when spelled out like that, it really couldn't be any more obvious. The only thing that superficially separates it from other slasher movies is the science fiction angle, with both the hero and villain being from a dystopian future. But there is also a deeper, much more important reason that I believe The Terminator stands out from most other horror movies of its era. And it's one that ties back to that science fiction element. The Terminator himself. Think about it. Look at classic slasher movie villains like Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, or Freddy Krueger. What do they all have in common? They're impossible to kill or destroy. Maybe in their first few movies they appear a bit more vulnerable, but with seemingly a million sequels to each one, it becomes hard after a while to believe that anything can truly put these guys away. And even in their original movies, they survive things that they really shouldn't be able to. And that's what I believe leads to one of the biggest problems with slasher movies. How on earth do you actually stop the monster? Like take Jason for example. What is he? A demon? A zombie? Just a straight up monster? And how do you kill him? Every method you could possibly use to kill a person has probably been employed on him, and yet he still comes back for more. So what is it that allows him to do that? Or what about Freddy Krueger? Because if he only exists in dreams, what's his weakness? Does he even have one? And how do you even stop a demon that can kill people in their sleep? My point is, a lot of the time, especially the longer these series go on, the logic behind the killers ends up thrown right out the window, to the point that the audience might wonder why the characters even bother trying to stop them at all. But it's not like that with the Terminator. Because simply put, the Terminator is a highly advanced robot sent from the future, programmed to kill a woman to protect its creator's existence. Basically, everything behind the Terminator makes sense. Why do bullets not affect it? Because it's a robot made of straw and metal underneath the skin. Why is it seemingly impossible to destroy? For the exact same reason. Why does it want to kill Sarah Connor? Because it was programmed to. Why is it relentless? For the exact same reason. Why is it intelligent? Because it was programmed by artificial intelligence. And where did it come from? It came from the future to try and prevent its creator from being destroyed later on. Basically, anything that would normally be glossed over in a regular slasher movie is actually given an explanation here, and it frankly makes the movie easier to watch as a result. Because again, unlike typical horror movie villains like Jason or Freddy, it's easy to understand what the Terminator is. At the end of the day, it's just a robot, plain and simple. And because of that, it not only makes its feats all the more believable, but it allows the audience to understand it. Like, because the audience understands that it's an advanced robot, it makes them legitimately wonder if the characters will be able to stop it because they can comprehend what it actually is. Unlike Jason, for example, who is seemingly invincible only because the narrative says so and never explains why. Heck, despite having believability on its side, the Terminator even shows more logical weakness than these other monsters do. Like, for example, when it's shot in the arm with a shotgun, it's left with a huge hole and slight damage to the actual function of the arm it has to fix. Or when it's run over by a truck, its one leg joint is completely broken and is left with a limp. My point is, even though it's a robot, it does have limitations, and the movie accurately reflects those limitations, and thus makes its existence even more believable to the audience. Because if James Cameron just reflected the advantages that come with it being a robot, it might fall in closer to other slasher movie villains. But because it also reflects the logical outcome of it enduring more than it was meant to, then that only helps make it feel even more authentic. And in the end, it's even destroyed through something that makes total sense. Because once again, just because it's a robot doesn't mean it can handle anything. And when put under a metallic flattening press, naturally isn't able to stand up to the pressure and is destroyed beyond repair. And most notably, it does not come back after it's seemingly been defeated. Once it's finally destroyed, it's destroyed, and nothing is going to bring it back. In the sequels, it's completely different robots that just look like the original. The first one is done. Besides, it already had that jump scare moment when Kyle Reese blew its legs off. And not to mention, when you really think about it, it mainly comes down to the fact that Sarah and Kyle are just normal people without access to anything that might help them that makes the Terminator such a threat in the first place. Because if the government was after it, it wouldn't stand a chance with what they could throw at it. But because they, or the police, don't really have the resources to do the logical damage to it that they need to for most of the movie, it comes across as completely unstoppable. And tellingly, once they start having greater resources to use against it, the robot is actually taken out pretty quickly, all things considered. So the point is, everything regarding the Terminator in this movie is perfect because it's written to exist within the boundaries of what a real robot would be capable of. And because the audience can comprehend what that is, it makes the Terminator all the more frightening because his feats and behavior are actually believable. His entire existence actually makes sense. Now, obviously, there are plenty of other reasons why the Terminator stands out from the many slasher movies of the 1980s, with one of the best probably being that it actually contains themes and morals rather than existing just to scare people. And James Cameron was able to pull that off so effectively that both the Terminator and Skynet have become basically the poster child for what everybody fears and wants to avoid from the future in regards to AI. In other words, behind all that running, killing, and chasing is a movie that warns heavily against artificial intelligence getting out of control. And it's one that more people should honestly take to heart. Because if we're not careful, we might just end up living in a world similar to the one the Terminator comes from at some point. But to get back to the title character himself, I really do believe that his existence and what he is within the narrative really went a long way in making him different than other slasher monsters. And not to mention, the science fiction angle did also allow for a lot more action than most slasher horror movies, which the sequel not only chose to fully embrace, but also probably made the original stand out more, because that helped make an already intense viewing even more thrilling. So all around, the decision to make a slasher movie where the monster is actually a futuristic robot is one that I believe was really smart on the part of James Cameron. Because not only did it give horror movie lovers of the time a much more intense experience, but it also gave them a villain that they could actually understand and make total sense of while still being terrifying. And because the Terminator is comprehensible, with everything regarding him being based off logic, it might have made him a lot scarier and allowed him to stand the test of time much better than if he had been some kind of supernatural being with no discernible rules or weaknesses surrounding him. Okay, I think I'm going to end it there before I get repetitive. So now I'd like to hear from all of you. Do you believe that a major underlying reason for the success of the Terminator lies in the fact that its villain runs on logic, unlike so many other slasher movies? Or do you believe I've got it completely wrong and that has nothing to do with why it became so popular? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, you don't have to agree with this video if you don't want to. You are entitled to your own opinion and can think I was absolutely 100% wrong if you want to. And thank you all for watching. I really appreciate all of it. And I hope to see you all next time.